My name is Sonny Macon. I'm the CEO of ABC Florida East Coast. I want to welcome you to episode number
20 of the Obvious Podcast.
That's right.
So, my name is Peter Dyga, and I'm the president and CEO of Associated Builders and Contractors Florida East Coast Chapter.
The Obvious Podcast is a production of ABC Florida East Coast. Unless otherwise stated, all content reflects the opinions of the guests and the host, which is us.
And if you like the Obvious Podcast, you can subscribe on all the major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and Spotify, among others, or watch the audio-visual version on YouTube. You can also follow the Obvious Podcast on Instagram and Truth Social. And you can always reach out to us via email, and we hope you will, at theobvious@abceastflorida.com. Links to all the social media feeds are in the episode show notes. And if you want to help others find the podcast, please leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. So we hope you subscribe. It's the easiest way of getting that notice as soon as we've published a new version.
Exactly. So, why make it hard on yourself? Just subscribe. So, Peter, 20.
Episode 20.
2-0.
Yep.
So does this mean with the next episode we can start drinking? You know what 20?
Just kidding. Don't get myself in any trouble. No, there's no drinking involved except for water and iced tea. So
that's true. No, that's iced tea.
So we leave the drinking to you all, and enjoy yourself as much as you like. So I mean, hopefully we're not driving you to it, but you're just enjoying it.
Well, this episode might drive them to it.
Well, maybe. Just because we're reminding of some things that, not us, but some of the things. We want to talk about leadership matters.
Leadership matters. It's not one of your favorite sayings.
It's one of my favorite sayings, especially in politics, right?
And in how we run associations.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's right.
So we talk about that all the time because we have a lot of leaders. Mm-hmm. We have a board of directors. We have committees. We have members of the community that are leaders in the organization. We obviously have leadership and staff. So there's a lot of leadership at ABC. And so leadership matters. And this has been all jokes aside, this has been a difficult time in the recent weeks watching what's happening in Los Angeles and the fires. And I was just really reminded about how much of a price a society and a culture and a city can pay when they have terrible leadership,
Absolutely. So, and the irony is, over the years, decades, whatever, it seems like if one tries to call attention to the fact that leadership matters, depending on the context, you're either a unifier or you're a divider.
A divider.
If you do it against the wrong people, and you call attention to the fact that their leadership has been detrimental, now all of a sudden you're being divisive and political. But leadership does matter. It's important for us as a society, as an organization even, to focus on leadership development and to focus on the results of the leadership, to focus on the policies. And I think one of the most obvious examples of that in that we're all faced with right now, as you're listening to this podcast, is with the new president. I think we've done a podcast on. It's amazing that almost the day after the election. And thank God we actually had an election where we knew the results, the day after as opposed to weeks after. But
there were districts. There were districts in Oregon and Washington. That
I think maybe still. I wouldn't be surprised if, as you're listening to this podcast, there may be some places they're still counting. Quite frankly, 19
million people in Florida. I mean, that's some absurd number, and we're able to figure it out.
But the point is, it's amazing how just knowing that leadership will change. How much is happening and has happened around the world, right? In terms of behavior and expectation.
Watching Trudeau fly to Mar-a-Lago.
Exactly. Peace deals being brokered, and anyway, we could go on and on.
Facebook talking about, we're getting rid of our censorship department.
Right.
They didn't call it censorship department, whatever they called it. Fact checks.
Right. And I'm at the president of Mexico, initially was bombastic and, like a lot of people are. And then something changed over the course of weeks, and I would posit that was the leadership. It was the person that she was now talking to about the consequences of continuing to, allow,
Do you remember that
migrant caravans to cross her country and the drug cartels to continue? All of a sudden, she's kind of changed her perspective. Leadership matters. Leadership matters.
I remember during the Biden administration, it was almost like it was inevitable. Oh yeah, the border is what it is, and the people will continue to come, and it's inevitable. Like you can't really do anything. They almost created an air of inevitability around all of their issues. Of course, they were able to do that because they had the full backing of the Fourth Estate. So if the media's
That's right.
completely behind you, you're able to pull that off.
We have a clip that kind of relates to that.
Yeah.
Is that now a good time to play that, or did you have a? So you make a good point, though. It's like, again, when it's the people whose bad decisions have kind of resulted in disastrous or consequences, or it's never it's my leadership or poor leadership, but they certainly are quick to talk about how they're good leadership when they're out there talking about saving little fish and cutting budgets. And
the guy who drives me the most batty when it comes to pseudo leadership is the governor of California, right? Obviously great on camera, photogenic, great hair, good looking, good speaker.
Right.
But I heard somebody say the other day that California was like a supermodel, right? Great to look at, but just nutty in every other way. And
that's spectacular.
And it made me.
It's great.
And it made me think of Gavin Newsom, right? And there was
there's a clip that I'm sure people have seen happened during those fires. A woman that was very emotionally distraught.
Yeah, where he was like, I'm on the phone with Biden right now. Right. She's
and
like,
then,
let me hear it.
And then as it turns out, he wasn't on the phone right now. And then as it turns out, he couldn't even get through. And, the poor lady just wanted some hope. She wanted some sense of, my leaders are talking about this. And instead, he lied and he exacerbated it and made it worse, right? Because telling her, I'm on the phone with him now. And he wasn't, So in any event.
I mean, so there's a clip, and I'm going to play this for our audience. There's a clip of Anderson Cooper, who nobody would ever confuse for
being a
Sean Hannity or some right-wing Newsmax host.
And not even close to center.
No. I mean, he doesn't know where the center is. And he's interviewing Gavin Newsom. This is during the California fires. And asks him about the lack of water in the hydrants. So I'm just going to play this for our audience right now.
So the irony as you cue that up is that, this fire in L.A. Is just replete with examples of
terrible
policies
leadership
and terrible leadership that led to this.
Right. It's fascinating.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter in this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system.
Local folks
will figure that out.
Now, imagine a hurricane hitting Florida and Ron DeSantis saying, listen, I'm not really sure what's going on here, but the local folks will figure. The media would eviscerate him. Eviscerate him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then this guy thinks he's going to become the next president.
Yeah. So, I'd like to do our part here today with reminding people of again why leadership matters, and you don't need leaders like this who not only make bad decisions, which hopefully we can get into a little bit that led to this, but then the local folks will figure it out.
And speaking of local folks, it's a famous clip now of the mayor of LA coming back from Africa and getting
she was on the jetway, I think, and she, by the way, she had the whole transatlantic flight to think about what she wanted to say. Right? I mean,
17 hours.
The woman's flying back from Africa and she comes off the plane and she's dead silent for 2 minutes to probably 3, 4, or 5 different questions that, the journalist asked her. And they were reasonable questions.
I heard somebody say, imagine if somebody was shouting questions at Trump and Trump doesn't say a word.
Exactly.
Can you even imagine that?
Yeah. The double standard, obviously, I think most people are aware of it at this point.
But I'm going to refresh our audience's memory and play this clip for them.
That's great.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor?
Leadership matters.
Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today?
Leadership matters. She's the mayor.
Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
I love that little English twist. Are you considering your position?
But she could just say, my heart breaks for my people.
Right.
Just say something like that.
That's exactly right.
I mean, there's so many things you can have said in that situation. And just to have no words, it boggles my mind. And you know what? I'm going to play this clip for you. I just randomly Googled Ron DeSantis hurricane briefing, right? I don't even know what hurricane, it's Hurricane Milton. And some reporter asks him a question about assets. And I'm just randomly playing a clip.
So as I mentioned, we've been discussing with some of the federal partners about acceleration of what needs to be done, if something needs to be done on these ports. To say like, oh, it's going to be weeks for a port, no, that doesn't work. Okay, we got to get it open. And I think they're of the same mind, and I think that Kevin and our team have had good conversations. We've also, Kevin, I know, is talking, both Kevin and I talk with the FEMA administrator about some of the things that we're looking for. For example, with this debris. Let local governments do the debris a little bit differently so that we incentivize people to come and do it quickly. Because
he's talking about debris and opening ports, right? And I've sat through a few of these conferences, news conferences. If you ever want to know what competent leadership looks like, watch Ron DeSantis talk about hurricanes.
Right.
It is unbelievable. I was so blown away. I remember this last hurricane. He was speaking and started taking questions, and some reporter asked, how are people who can't, indigent people, going to get to the shelters? And he had a code, didn't look it up, didn't call it a URL. He literally said, this is the code, go on Lyft, go on Uber, and you'll get a free ride to the shelters, right?
And it's not
that
just
wouldn't even have occurred to me, and he
absolutely.
had an answer ready.
What a
to
great
go.
contrast, amazing. So, and hopefully people see it. I think they do. I think, and again, it's not about blame and it's not about politicizing things. It's about holding our leaders accountable. And it's a fair question to ask, what led to this? When water won't come out of the hydrants, when the fires are so the timber is so dry and it just flash points from one place to another where you have 7 or 8 burning and 0% containment, as again in past weeks you all recall, it's perfectly appropriate. In fact, it would be, in my opinion, negligent, to not ask people. So,
right, so
but it's much more than just how they handle it at a press conference, right?
Right. It's much more than that.
It's much more than that.
I have a question for you.
That's a symptom, really, of the problem more than
Yeah. But I have a question for you. So, and you and I have briefly discussed this, right? Wealthy elites typically don't pay the price for bad public policy, right? Like high crime
Yes.
doesn't really affect wealthy elites.
Yeah, they got the money to
right?
live behind gates and
Exactly.
security.
Open borders don't really affect
Right.
wealthy elites. But
Yeah.
these LA fires, and it's fascinating to watch how the media has turned on the bureaucrats, because the wealthy elites have lost their homes. They've lost their schools.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about, I keep reading these names of, Tom Hanks and
Right.
all the John Goodman lost his home, and Spielberg might have lost his home, and there's all these and I'm really curious to see what the consequences of that are, because this is bad public policy that has finally affected the wealthy elites,
Right.
who are so insulated.
And you're insinuating that that's maybe why we're getting away a little bit more with holding them accountable. Otherwise,
that's exactly what I'm insinuating.
So yeah, I think I saw a meme, shortly after the fires. It had, and I'm going to change one word in this meme, but it was kind of a woman distraught, obviously over the destruction. Maybe she lost her house or her business or whatnot, and she was, like, I voted for poor leadership that did this to my city. I can't wait to vote for a different set of poor leadership. Now, I substituted the poor leadership for a different word that was in that meme. But anyway, the point is, these are elected officials. Yeah. We get an opportunity every 2 years or 4 years to decide whether their policies. And let's talk a little bit about the policies because they were pretty widely covered, and I'm hoping they'll continue to be covered.
Yeah. Before I get into that, I do want to play a clip for you. This was Ron DeSantis at Mar-a-Lago, and I believe it was a Trump press conference.
This kind of contrasts when a Republican exercises poor leadership, they don't have any problem calling him out.
Right.
But when we're trying to hold leadership accountable, for example, in the fires, all of a sudden it's why are you politicizing it? This right? This is that clip where it kind of contrasts that.
But to your point, when Anderson Cooper is told by Gavin Newsom, oh yeah, the locals will answer for that.
Right.
Why does Anderson Cooper not have a follow-up? What do you mean the locals will handle it?
Yeah. I think one of the other responses I saw from the mayor was, well, this is unprecedented. That's the reason we had no water in the fire hydrant is because this was unprecedented. Anyway.
Oh, speaking of that, you can address that because in the Joe Rogan Donald Trump interview prior to the election, there's a whole conversation about California fires.
Yes.
Right?
And actually, what would it have been 4 years ago, anywhere from 4 to 8 years ago when Donald Trump's first term?
Yeah, 2016.
He was out there having conversations with Governor, is it?
Newsom, same thing.
Newsom? I'm sorry, Newsom.
He calls it Newsom, yeah.
About the same thing. So it's not just something that happened in the last 9 months or 6 months during the course of a campaign. When he was president, he was trying to provide and some direction that, you needed better forest management. You needed more water and more reserves, in any event.
By the way, I do love it when there's a Democratic politician who has exercised bad leadership and you call him out on it. You're either, whoa, yes. It's too soon, don't politicize it.
That's right.
Or, why are you living in the past?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to play this.
Is it appropriate for people in your industry to try to create division and to try to create narratives anytime these things happen? Now, you're not as interested in doing that because Newsom is a D. If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would you would have him nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there. And I know we've dealt with it. We just assume in Florida, anytime something happens, it's going to be politicized by the media. So you guys sitting in judgment of Donald Trump, excuse me, I think your track record of politicizing these things is very, very bad.
Okay, last question. Newsom should resign and that the Wild.
What an answer.
I want you to play more of it.
Okay, let's go.
I think it even gets, there's a little bit.
I remember when we had the Surfside Tower collapse, I had people from the Washington Post trying to blame me for it immediately without having any facts.
Because he's an R.
Oh, he didn't declare a state of emergency. First of all, state of emergency doesn't mean you can't respond. It's all that. Excuse me?
Biden did it. I think that's what you said.
Well, but what I'm telling you is you guys are trying to make an issue of it when I have watched from this seat. In fact, when I got elected governor, I was meeting with some of the other Republican governors, and what they would say is, hey, if you have a natural disaster, just know media's coming at you, they're going to do it. It's not the same. That mayor of L.A., if that were a Republican mayor, I could only imagine what that would do. The fires are at high risk, and you try to go to Africa or wherever she was to go on some type of voyage. You should have been there preparing and doing that, and yet I don't see a lot of heat being directed in that thing. And so, I'd like to see some balance on how this is done. You could criticize the president-elect, but I think you also have to hold these other people accountable, and I have not seen
this. This is why we love our governor.
I know. I wish he would have just called them a bunch of groveling hypocrites.
So, well, in essence, did.
Unbelievable.
But anyway, the point here is, again, policy matters, leadership matters.
Yep.
California has had a long-standing commitment to not foresting and managing their forests, which has contributed to this. I think it's pretty widely known now that the Governor Newsom did away with 4 dams that had large water reservoirs that could have been used to fight fires. They also had a lot of policy, which the president spoke about in his first term, and he spoke about, as you said on the Joe Rogan podcast, about their water policies of not letting the watershed come down in the state and flush it out
from north to south. They wouldn't allow it,
and the whole dam thing was in large part to save what is I think
that little fish
basically been listed as extinct already. But a little fish. You have the mayor flying out to Africa when the fires starting or you're high alert. You got her coming back from a transatlantic trip with 2 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
You got Governor Newsom lying about talking to the president about the situation. You got fire hydrants that didn't work. You've got $17 million in cuts in the budget to the fire department.
Million, yeah.
You got a county that has one super scooper. I think those are the planes that are called. This is an area of the country and they have one. They had to rent two from California.
Yeah.
I heard somebody on CNN say, somebody asking, you got the ocean right there. Why aren't those super scoopers picking that up? Well, because we're renting the super scoopers and we can't have the corrosive salt water working. I mean, what's my point of this litany? I mean, it's because all these things have come out in a short period, and it's not about politicizing something. It's not about.
It's about holding leadership accountable.
It's all about holding leadership accountable, and we need to do it as a country, as an association. I mean, right? I mean,
every level.
We're held accountable, and we expect to be held accountable as the privilege that our volunteer leaders, that govern this organization have given us, and so hold us accountable. We are happy to, in a different circumstance, we might not be as ambitious to talk about our successes, but we have a lot of success.
We have a lot of success.
And we always try to, where we can, mix, again, I talk about this weird combination of our show, our podcast of between current affairs and back and forth between you and I with
leadership matters, right?
With ABC and the association and try to tie it all in. So anyway, I'm going to try to tie it in by inviting people.
Before you do that, I'm going to make the point that there's this perception that success occurs in a vacuum, right? And it just doesn't. Like it's a result of persistent good leadership, and then that leadership sort of leading to a series of events that are repeated consistently. And so you pursue excellence consistently. You do hard work consistently. So the idea that you and I were talking about this, ABC has multiple income streams and does all this great work and the largest apprenticeship program in the state and largest commercial construction association in the state. There's all these things that are happening. It just didn't happen magically, right? It took leadership to get there, and it took work and 25 years of your leadership, and there's a lot.
It took
goes into it.
Great members and volunteer leaders to develop the strategies and the big pictures, and then it took great staff over the course of many, many decades and years to implement, and make sure that those strategies got achieved.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked on many podcasts about the different aspects of ABC, whether it's the leadership in government affairs or apprenticeship, community involvement with the foundation and the hundreds of thousands of dollars they're giving to our industry professionals every year. Anyway, we could go on and on. I want to invite anybody who's listening, who's an ABC member, or even if you're not, become an ABC member and get engaged, get involved. We have many ways to ask you, politely to do that and to make a difference in this industry. So,
well, thank you for listening and honoring us with your time. We look forward to sharing another episode with you very soon.
And for comments, send us an email at theobvious@abceastflorida.com. Until next time, ciao.